Hello, this is Whispers in the Rain. Welcome to tonight's scary story reading, one to keep you company as the storm rolls in. Comment where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Let the rain drown the noise of the outside world, and let the darkness take over from here. The Boy in the Closet. Laura stood at the edge of the cornfield behind the farmhouse, the wind tugging gently at her cardigan as she watched Danny chase the breeze with a plastic pinwheel in hand. He laughed, high and clear, his dark curls bouncing with each step. To an outsider, it would seem idyllic, a young boy, free under a wide blue sky, his mother nearby. But Laura's smile was tight, rehearsed. Something didn't feel right. They'd moved here 2 weeks ago. The farmhouse was old but affordable, tucked away on a forgotten stretch of Pennsylvania backroad. A fixer-upper, the realtor had said. Great bones, just needs a little love. The price had been suspiciously low, but Laura didn't ask questions. She needed out of the city, needed distance from her ex-husband, from the stress, from the way Danny had started changing. At first, he'd been thrilled by the house, especially his room with a walk-in closet. It's like a secret cave, he'd said, flopping onto the floor and peering into the dark recess behind the door. Laura had smiled. Only if you promised to keep the monsters out. He grinned. They're already in. She thought he was being playful. But over the days that followed, she'd catch him sitting at the edge of the closet, whispering. Not singing, not playing, whispering, mouth barely moving, like he was sharing secrets with the air. She'd ask who he was talking to. He'd reply with something vague. The boy. Or, doesn't like when you ask. Last night, she heard the whispering again. At 2:13 a.m., Laura opened Danny's door slowly. Moonlight poured across his bed. He wasn't in it. He was sitting cross-legged in front of the open closet, his back to her, head tilted at a strange angle. What are you doing up? She asked. He didn't turn. He was lonely. Laura stepped into the room, keeping her voice steady. Danny, who is he? A pause. Then, softly, the boy who lives inside the closet. Laura stood frozen in the doorway. The air in the room felt still, thick, as if holding its breath. She took a careful step forward, then another. Danny, she said softly, there's no one in the closet. He finally turned his head toward her, but his eyes didn't quite meet hers. You don't see him, he whispered, but he sees you. Laura crouched beside him, trying not to let the unease slip into her voice. Is this a game? You're scaring me a little, bud. Danny frowned, then looked into the dark space of the closet. He says you don't believe. That's why he's quiet when you're around. Who is he? She asked again, her fingers brushing Danny's arm. The boy looked down at the hardwood floor. He says his name's Eli. Laura's chest tightened. She glanced into the closet. Nothing but shadows, boxes, and a dusty row of hanging coats. No sign of anything unusual. But the darkness behind those coats seemed thicker somehow. More than just shadow. She stood, went to the closet, and flipped on the ceiling light. It flickered once, then steadied. Still nothing. All right, she said. Closet time is over. Back to bed, kiddo. Danny obeyed silently, curling under his blanket with the same vacant expression. Laura kissed his forehead and closed the door behind her. The next morning, she found the drawing. It lay on the kitchen table, folded neatly. She hadn't seen Danny bring any paper down from his room. He hadn't eaten breakfast yet. But there it was. She unfolded it slowly. 2 boys were drawn in thick, clumsy crayon. One had Danny's curly hair and blue shirt. The other was taller, drawn in black. No pupils, just 2 round holes for eyes. His mouth was a scribbled, jagged line. The background was red, as if the entire sky had been filled with fire. On the back, written in messy block letters, he wants to trade places. Laura stared at the message. She flipped the paper over again, her breath catching. The tall boy in black wasn't just next to Danny in the drawing. He was standing behind him. Laura couldn't stop staring at the drawing. The crayon lines felt wrong, too aggressive for a 6-year-old. The figure behind Danny wasn't smiling or even frowning. Its expression was nothing. A blank, soulless void. And the way it loomed over her son, it didn't look like a friend. It looked like a shadow preparing to swallow something whole. She folded the paper carefully and tucked it into a kitchen drawer, suddenly unsettled by how cold her hands felt. Later that afternoon, she returned to Danny's room. He was outside, chasing moths along the fence line. The closet stood open again. Laura stepped inside the small walk-in space. A few coats and sweaters hung limply on rusted hangers. Boxes lined the shelves, old books, knickknacks from the move, winter boots. Nothing out of the ordinary, but still something gnawed at her gut. She reached up and closed the closet door behind her just to feel it. Darkness swallowed the room immediately. The quiet was unnatural, thick and pressing, as if the closet had muffled the whole world. She held her breath, waited, then, creak. The floorboard beneath her heel shifted slightly. A hollow sound. She crouched, pressing her palm against the floor. Something didn't feel solid. With a screwdriver from the garage, she returned and began prying up the floorboard. It lifted with a dry groan, revealing a shallow space underneath. Dust, a few old marbles, and a small rusted padlock. It was cold to the touch, colder than it should have been, even for a drafty farmhouse. There was something carved into the metal. She squinted. Ellie. Laura's skin prickled. She dropped the lock into a plastic bag, sealed it, and shoved it deep into a box of tools. Maybe it was just coincidence. Maybe it belonged to someone else, some kid who used to live here years ago. Maybe. That night, she locked the closet with a latch she installed herself. Screwed in tight. She kissed Danny goodnight and watched him drift off, the closet sealed behind him. At 2:17 a.m., she woke to the sound of hinges creaking. The latch was broken. The closet door hung open, and Danny was standing inside it. Danny. Laura's voice cracked as she stood at the doorway, the dim hallway light flickering behind her. Her son stood just inside the closet, still as stone, bathed in shadows. She stepped into the room cautiously, barefoot on the cool hardwood. Danny, sweetheart, come out of there. He turned slowly, his face pale in the moonlight, eyes wide, but empty, like someone looking through her instead of at her. He says it's better this way, he whispered. Laura knelt, arms out. Who, Danny? Who told you that? He took a small step forward. Ellie. He doesn't want to be alone anymore. The hairs on the back of her neck bristled. She looked past him into the closet. The darkness didn't seem to move like normal darkness. It breathed, pulsed faintly, like something shifting just beyond her ability to focus. Danny, she said, firmer this time. I want you to come to me. Right now. Something moved behind him. She saw it, just for a second. The faintest outline of a hand, long-fingered and grayish-white, reaching out from the dark. It didn't grab him. It hovered, caressing the air an inch from his shoulder. Laura lunged. She grabbed Danny around the waist and yanked him out of the closet, stumbling backward onto the bedroom floor. The door swung shut behind them with a violent slam, even though no wind had blown. Danny started to cry, not loud, but a soft, whimpering sob. He's mad now, he whispered in her neck. You weren't supposed to see him. Laura clutched him close, rocking gently. She could feel his heartbeat hammering through his pajamas. When she finally got him to sleep, lights on, door open, she returned to the closet. A part of her screamed not to do it. Another part knew she had to. She opened the door. The closet was empty, but there were footprints on the floor. Small, border, leading from the corner of the closet to the doorway. Except they weren't Danny's. They were too long, too thin, and there were only two. The next morning, Laura didn't bother waiting until breakfast. While Danny watched cartoons with a blanket pulled tight around him, she opened her laptop at the kitchen table and began searching. Property records, news clippings, local archives, anything she could find about the farmhouse or the previous owners. There were only a few mentions. The place hadn't been sold in over 30 years before her. The name Caraway came up multiple times, Alan and Grace Caraway, and a child. No first name listed. No mention of a second child, either. Laura chewed her lip. She dug deeper. Eventually, in a grainy scanned article from 1993, she found it. Local boy missing from locked home. Her blood turned to ice. The photo showed a boy, maybe 7, standing beside a wooden fence. His features were fuzzy, but something about the way he stood, with his hands curled against his sides, and his head tilted slightly down, was eerily familiar. The article was sparse on details. The boy, Eli Caraway, had vanished from his upstairs bedroom overnight. No signs of forced entry. Doors and windows locked from the inside. His parents were questioned, cleared, and eventually moved away. The case went cold. Laura sat back, her pulse hammering in her throat. She looked toward the hallway, where Danny sat wrapped up on the couch. He was doodling in a sketch pad again, drawing obsessively. She approached slowly, kneeling beside him. "What are you working on, honey?" He tilted the page so she could see. It was another drawing of two boys. One was Danny. The other was Eli, drawn in even darker black crayon than before. But this time, the shadowy figure had grown taller. Too tall. Its arms stretched down to the floor. Its face was starting to change, mouth wider, eyes completely gone. Just holes. They said he disappeared. Danny said suddenly, not looking up. Laura flinched. Who said that? Danny paused, crayon still in hand. The house. It remembers him. Before she could respond, he looked up at her, eyes bright with fear. Mom, he doesn't like you digging. That night, Laura didn't sleep. She sat in bed with a cup of cold tea beside her and her laptop glowing softly on her lap. The article about Eli stayed open on the screen, and every time she read the boy's name, her skin tightened. Eli Carovu, missing without a trace. Last seen in the very room Danny now slept in. She checked the baby monitor app on her phone again. The camera faced Danny's bed. He was bundled under the covers, small and still. But something about the shadows in the room fell off. The closet door, even though she had resecured the latch earlier, was slightly ajar again. She stared at the monitor for a full minute. The closet door creaked open just an inch more. No wind, no movement. Laura bolted from bed. She rushed to Danny's room, heart pounding. He was still asleep. The closet door was open, wide this time. Nothing inside but coats and shadows. Laura exhaled shakily and closed the door again, double-checking the latch. As she turned to leave, Danny stirred. Don't, he said softly, eyes still closed. She froze. Don't what? He opened his eyes, slow and unfocused. He doesn't like being trapped. That's why the other boy disappeared. Laura sat on the edge of his bed. What do you mean, sweetheart? What other boy? Danny didn't answer right away. He looked at the closet and whispered, the first one. They played the whisper game. What's that? She asked, brushing his curls from his forehead. He blinked slowly. You tell him secrets, and he tells you lies. But if you believe them, he gets stronger. Laura's stomach turned. Have you played the whisper game, Danny? A tear slipped from the corner of his eye. I didn't want to, but he won't stop whispering, even when I cover my ears. She hugged him tight. You don't have to listen, baby. He can't hurt you. Danny clung to her. Behind her, the closet door creaked open again. The latch hadn't failed. It was still locked. The door had opened through the frame, like the wood itself had bent. The next morning, Laura didn't bother trying to reassure Danny with soft words or cartoons. She called a child psychologist, scheduled an appointment, and took the day off work. But even as she loaded Danny into the car, a cold weight pressed against the back of her neck. The feeling you get when someone is watching you through a mirror. Danny clutched a small action figure as they drove. His face looked drawn, pale. Did he talk to you last night? Laura asked gently, her eyes on the road. Danny nodded, barely. What did he say? Danny looked down at the toy. He said you're in the way. Laura's grip on the wheel tightened. He's not real, Danny. He's just a bad dream. Her son turned to look out the window. He's more real than some people. That line unsettled her more than anything. The psychologist's office was clean, warmly lit, and filled with posters about feelings and coping tools. Danny was quiet during the session, barely speaking, but he did agree to draw again. The drawing he handed the psychologist chilled Laura to her bones. It was of her, but different. Her eyes were hollow. Her mouth was stitched closed. Standing behind her, of course, was Eli, now with his long fingers draped over her shoulders like a puppet master. He says you're already starting to forget, Danny murmured. Forget what? The psychologist asked. Danny looked down. What breathing sounds like. On the way home, Laura asked him to explain, but he didn't speak again. He stared out the window the entire drive. When they pulled into the driveway, he said only one thing. He followed us here. He doesn't like the woods, but he'll wait. He always waits. That night, Laura sat in bed, watching Danny sleep on the monitor. She turned the volume up, pressing the speaker to her ear. Through the static, she heard whispering. Not Danny. Another voice. Faint. Scratching. Closer, closer. Trade places. She dropped the phone. The screen stayed lit. Danny was no longer in bed. Laura's breath caught in her throat as she stared at the glowing screen. Danny's bed was empty. The blankets lay folded strangely, not as if tossed aside but peeled back, like someone had removed them with delicate hands. She sprinted down the hallway, heart hammering in her chest, and threw open his door. Danny, the room was cold. Icebox cold. She could see her breath fogging in the air. The closet door, open again. The latch was still bolted, unbroken. But the door had peeled away from it. The wood splintered outward around the lock, like something had crawled through the frame itself. Laura moved forward, every inch of her skin crawling. Danny, the silence was unbearable. Then movement, a soft, rustling sound from inside the closet. She stepped in. The light bulb above flickered, blinked, died. She fumbled for her phone and turned on the flashlight. There was Danny, crouched in the far back corner of the closet, knees pulled to his chest. His eyes were wide, unblinking. Danny! She dropped to her knees and reached for him. What are you doing? What happened? He didn't speak. Not at first. Then, in a voice that was not entirely his, he said, I had to go where he lives. Laura recoiled. What? Danny, it's me. Come on, baby, we have to get out of here. He blinked slowly, and for a moment his face changed, just subtly, like a film had passed over it, like someone else had tried it on. Laura pulled him from the closet, arms tight around his small frame, heart racing. I saw the in-between, he whispered in her ear as they sat on the floor, light flooding back into the room. What? His lip trembled. It's where the forgotten live. Where Eli hides. She cradled him tighter. We're getting help. We're leaving. He shook his head violently. You can't leave. Not after the closet opens. It remembers you. The light overhead popped. The bulb shattered. Something knocked 3 times from inside the wall. Not the closet door. Inside the wall. Laura froze. The sound, those 3 slow, deliberate knocks, reverberated through the floor beneath her. Not like pipes or old beams. These were intentional, rhythmic, and close. Danny squeezed her hand tightly, his fingers ice cold. He stared at the wall across the room, the one opposite the closet. It's not just a closet anymore, he whispered. He's spreading. Laura swallowed hard. Danny, we're leaving. Tonight. I don't care what it takes. We're going somewhere safe. He didn't respond, just kept staring. The knocking came again. Knock, knock, knock. Laura stood, took Danny by the hand, and hurried him to the living room. She packed a small overnight bag, grabbed her keys, and slipped on her boots with trembling hands. As she reached for the doorknob, the front door wouldn't open. The lock turned. The handle moved, but the door stayed shut, as if something on the outside was holding it shut. Danny turned slowly, looking over his shoulder toward the hallway. He's mad, he said. He knows you want to leave. Laura ran to the back door. Same thing. Stuck. Jammed. Unmoving. She ran her hands along the frame, dry. No swelling. No warped wood. It just wouldn't open. She pulled out her phone. No signal. No Wi-Fi. Just a spinning wheel and a deadline. Her knees buckled slightly. This wasn't just bad luck. Something was wrong with the house itself. Danny suddenly began humming. A soft, tuneless melody under his breath. Danny, he didn't stop. He stared at the fireplace. The song, he said, it helps him sleep. That's what Eli told me. Eli is gone, Laura said desperately. He disappeared. Remember? Danny looked up at her, eyes glassy. Not disappeared, he said. Traded. Then from the hallway, a whisper. Not from Danny. Not from her. Just outside the kitchen doorway, a voice rasped. Are you ready to listen now? The whisper crawled across the room like a spider, low, dry, and full of splinters, like it had been scraped across broken wood before reaching her ears. Laura's breath hitched. She stared at the kitchen doorway, but nothing moved. No shadows darted. No wind stirred the curtains. Just silence. A silence so complete it rang in her ears. Danny's humming had stopped. She turned toward him. He was staring at the doorway too, lips slightly parted. "Did you hear it?" she whispered. He nodded once. He doesn't whisper for fun. He whispers to pull you closer. Laura took a shaky step back, positioning herself between Danny and the doorway. Another voice joined the first, softer but no less chilling. "He's listening now. He's inside." Laura backed them into the hallway, moving toward the front of the house. Her hand trembled as she reached for the phone again. Still no signal. Just a dead, cold screen. They passed the hallway mirror. She glanced. Just a flicker of motion in the reflection. Someone standing in Danny's room. Tall, thin, arms like dangling ropes. Its head turned too far to the side, the chin nearly resting on its shoulder. She spun around. The hallway was empty, but the whisper followed them. "Tell me a secret." Danny suddenly gripped her wrist with unnatural strength. "Don't answer him," he said, voice sharp and frightened. "That's how he gets in." Laura held him close as they turned the corner into her bedroom, slamming the door and locking it behind them. She dragged a dresser against it, panting. "We wait for morning," she muttered to herself. "Just wait for morning." Danny sat on the bed, rocking slightly. "What if it's already morning in his world?" he asked quietly. Laura stared at him. "What do you mean?" Danny looked up. His pupils were dilated. "Too large. He says time's different in the between. He says you've been asleep for days." There was a knock on the bedroom door. 3 times. Then silence. Then, "Laura, it's me. Open the door." It was her voice. Laura's blood ran cold. She backed away from the door, pulling Danny behind her. "Stay here," she whispered. He clutched her hand tightly. "It's not you," he said. "It wants to wear you." Another knock. "Please let me in." Danny's scared. The voice was perfect. Every inflection, every tremble. It even used the nickname, just like she would. But it wasn't muffled by the door. It sounded like it was already inside the room, like it had always been there. "Don't listen," Danny said, squeezing his eyes shut. "Don't answer her. Don't speak back." Laura grabbed the bedside lamp and yanked the cord from the wall. The only light left came from her phone flashlight, the battery nearly dead. Shadows inched across the ceiling like slow ink bleeding through water. The voice grew more frantic. "Danny's not safe with you. You're making it worse." She backed toward the window and peeled back the curtain. Beyond the glass was nothing but black. No yard, no trees, no stars, just a flat, depthless dark. She lifted the lock and tried the window. Stuck. No, not stuck. Gone. There was no frame beyond the glass. Just more wall. Seamless. Unbroken. Like the house had devoured the outside. Danny whispered he's folding it, making it small, so we fit in his house instead. The door rattled. Hard. Then the doorknob began to turn. Laura backed up to the far wall, dragging the dresser harder against it. "Danny, stay behind me. If that door opens." But before she could finish, the voice on the other side dropped to a low, shuddering groan. "Open the door, Laura. I need your face." Danny screamed. The mirror on the dresser cracked straight down the center. From inside the glass, something smiled. Not a reflection. Not her. The other Laura leaned forward and whispered from within the shattered frame. "We already traded places once." Laura stared into the cracked mirror, unable to move, breath caught like ice in her chest. The thing in the glass wore her face, but wrong. Too smooth, too perfect like porcelain. Its eyes were just black slits, gleaming wet and hungry. Danny stood beside her, trembling. "Don't look at her," he said. "She can see through you if you do." But Laura couldn't look away. The other Laura pressed her palm to the inside of the glass, and Laura felt heat radiating from the mirror's surface. Not cold, but hot like burning metal. "She's the one who talks for him," Danny whispered. "She's the first one he traded. She lives in the between." The mirror rippled. A voice hissed, not from the mouth of the other Laura, but from the crack itself. One step, one breath, one whisper. That's all it takes. Suddenly the bedroom door behind them burst inward, the dresser screeching across the floor. Laura whirled just in time to see the knob turn on its own, and the door fold in like paper, edges curling inwards as if being peeled back. A hand reached through, long, thin, with too many knuckles. Its skin was pale gray, mottled like old wallpaper. Danny screamed again. "He's coming through." Laura grabbed him and dove across the bed. The mirror shattered completely, and glass sprayed like frost across the room. For a moment, the air grew thick, heavy and wrong, like breathing underwater. Then, they were no longer in her bedroom. Laura looked around, gasping. The bed was gone. The walls were gray and soft, pulsing gently like lungs. The floor squelched beneath her feet. A closet door stood nearby. Just a door frame, freestanding, no wall around it. Danny pulled at her hand. "This is the in-between. He brought us here. Where is he?" Laura asked. Danny didn't answer, because a voice was already behind them. "Right where I've always been." Laura turned slowly. Behind her stood a figure, tall, thin, wrong in every angle. Eli, or what used to be Eli. His arms hung low, knuckles grazing the floor. His skin shimmered like old water damage, with patches of peeled wallpaper clinging to him like second skin. His head tilted too far left, and his mouth stretched wide, far wider than humanly possible. Danny stepped behind her. "That's not Eli anymore," he whispered. "That's just what he wears to make you listen." The creature's face convulsed, like something behind it was pressing to get out. "You remembered me," it said, in her voice, in Danny's voice, in Eli's voice, all layered together like tangled whispers. "So I kept a place for you." The room, or space, around them breathed. The walls didn't pulse now. They contracted, like they were inhaling the moment. Faint whispers danced in the air. Some spoke Laura's name. Others screamed it. She gripped Danny tighter. "Why us?" she demanded. "Why my son?" Eli, that was, tilted his head the other way. Bones creaked. "You saw him once. That's all. You looked at the crack. You remembered what wasn't supposed to be remembered. He heard you." "And children," the smile widened, cracking the skin. "Children open easier." Danny whispered. "He likes the ones with big imaginations. The ones who believe in closets. In monsters." Laura looked around for anything. A way out, a door, even a shadow to slip into. But all she saw were floating pieces of homes. A bed frame here. A broken lamp there. A swing set hovering in the gray fog like debris caught in orbit. "Where are we?" she asked. Danny answered, "In between places. Where forgotten things go. Where you go when the closet remembers you." The Eli thing took a step forward, limbs clicking. "Now it's time for the trade. You came in, so something else has to go out." Laura held Danny tight. "Over my dead body." The creature's smile widened again. "Exactly." The creature moved closer, its limbs unfolding like insect legs, impossibly long. Each step sent a vibration through the pulsing floor, and the very air seemed to pull back, recoiling from its presence. Laura stepped between it and Danny, hand shaking but fist clenched. "You're not taking him," she said, voice low, steady. The thing that wore Eli's shape paused. The mouth twisted again, folding outward in a grin that reached too far across its face. "You're still trying to play by your rules. But you're in mine now." Laura reached for something, anything, a broken piece of the bed frame, hovering like a splintered relic in the fog. Her hand closed around it. It felt real. Heavy. She held it up like a weapon. The creature's mouth drooped open, and from its depths came not words, but voices. Hundreds. Thousands. Whispering, screaming, pleading. Laura staggered back. Inside its mouth, faces twisted and churned. Some she recognized. Eli. The girl from the missing poster she'd seen once at the grocery store. A boy with wide, silent eyes. All trapped. All watching her. Danny tugged her sleeve. "Mom, I think it's offering us a deal." Laura looked at him wide-eyed. "What kind of deal?" He pointed. Behind the creature, a new door had appeared. Freestanding, warped and old. A closet door like theirs, except blackened with soot and scorched around the edges. The knob gleamed gold. The creature hissed. "One may leave. One must stay." Laura's throat tightened. "No." Danny looked up at her. "It means one of us." She shook her head. "No, absolutely not." But Danny stepped forward. "No," she shouted, grabbing him. "I won't let you." He turned to her. "If I stay, you can go. I don't want you trapped here, too." He wants me more. Tears flooded her eyes. You're just a little boy. You shouldn't even be here. The creature's hand rose, pointing toward the scorched door. Choose. Laura's heart cracked. This was a nightmare. No way out. No right answer. But then she remembered something. What Danny had said days ago. He only gets in if you believe he's real. She turned and stared at the thing. What if I don't choose? She whispered. And for the first time, the thing flinched. The thing that where Eli's skin paused. Its twisted grin faded slightly, like a signal dimming in the fog. Laura took a shaky step forward, holding tight to Danny's hand. If I don't choose, she said, louder now, steadier, then the rules break. Don't they? The creature's head snapped toward her, body twitching with a jerk like a broken marionette. There are always choices, but not always yours, Laura said. Danny squeezed her hand tighter. Don't look at the door, Mom. If you look at it, he'll know you're thinking about it. Laura shut her eyes. I'm not playing your game anymore, she said, voice trembling but firm. This place runs on fear, on belief, on stories passed around in whispers. But I don't believe in you. The air shifted. The creature's breath hissed out like wind through a cracked window pane. You came here. You remembered. That's enough. No, she said, taking another step. I am enough. A mother's will is enough. Danny's eyes filled with tears. He's mad now. The creature's arms unfolded again, stretching until they scraped the pulsing ceiling. The fog around them coiled tighter, the floating debris spinning faster. The scorched door creaked open a crack on its own, revealing nothing inside. No light, just absence. It lunged, Laura through the broken bedpost like a spear. It passed through the creature, but where it struck, the fog bent. She ran for that distortion, dragging Danny behind her. Don't let go, she shouted. The creature screamed. The sound was 100 glass shards falling all at once. As they reached the tear in the fog, something split beneath their feet. Light poured through the seam in the air like dawn breaking over black water. Danny's voice shouted, "Jump!" Laura leapt, and the world inverted. The last thing she heard before everything went silent was, "I'll wait in every closet." She woke up gasping in her bed. Danny was beside her, asleep, safe. It was morning. The mirror was whole. The closet door was shut, but the knob was warm to the touch. Morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting harmless golden bars across the floor. Birds chirped outside, real, alive, normal. Laura sat up slowly, her heart still hammering from what she hoped had been a nightmare. Danny stirred beside her, blinking awake. He looked up at her, then at the room. "Did we?" he began. Laura nodded, slowly. "We got out." He looked uncertain. "Did we really?" The question sank into her like ice. They rose together and checked every corner of the house. The hallway was just a hallway. The mirror no longer cracked. The dresser sat still. The closet door in Danny's room was closed. She touched the knob. Still warm. She opened it. Nothing inside but clothes. She exhaled, but leaned in to be sure. Near the back, she noticed something odd. A strip of wall where the paint was a shade too new, too clean. She moved the clothes aside. There, scratched beneath the surface of the paint, were 3 words carved deep and angry. "Still. Here. Waiting." Laura stumbled back. Danny was behind her, quiet. Too quiet. She turned. He looked pale. "What is it, sweetie?" He didn't speak, just pointed down. His shadow was wrong. It stretched toward the closet, even though the sun was behind him. It reached like it had fingers. "Danny," she said slowly, "are you feeling okay?" He nodded, but his eyes didn't meet hers. That night, she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces behind the Eli thing's mouth. The scorched door, the fog, and a whisper came back to her, faint but clear. You made a choice after all. She sat up in bed, heart pounding. Something had followed them out. Over the next few days, Laura tried to reclaim a sense of normalcy. She told herself it had been a trauma response, a hallucination brought on by lack of sleep, grief, guilt over Eli, and too many nights alone. But she couldn't ignore the signs. The heat on the closet knob never faded. Sometimes in the middle of the night, she'd hear it breathing. Not her own, not Danny's. but the soft, slow inhalation and exhalation of something massive hiding just behind the drywall. She even tried repainting the closet's interior, covered over the words scratched into the wood. But the next morning, they were back, etched deeper than before. Still here waiting. Danny changed, too. At first, it was subtle. He stopped drawing. He wouldn't play with his toys. He stared at the closet for long stretches, not afraid, but curious. Then came the whispers. Laura would wake in the middle of the night to find him sitting on the floor in the hallway, head tilted toward the door. "Danny?" She whispered one night, stepping out in her robe. "What are you doing?" He looked over his shoulder. His eyes were blank, sleepy. "He's teaching me," Danny said. "Teaching you what?" "How to fold." "Fold what?" He pointed at her. "You." That night, Laura moved a chair in front of the closet and sat there with a kitchen knife in her lap. She didn't sleep. Not once. At 3:17 a.m., the closet knob jiggled. Just once. Then a voice whispered from behind the door, gentle, amused. "You know the rules, Laura. You left with more than you brought in." She gripped the knife so tight her knuckles went white. The walls around her creaked. And then she heard it again, breathing. Slow, hungry, patient. By the end of the week, Laura stopped trying to pretend they were safe. Every instinct screamed that something had come back with them, something not fully part of their world, but bleeding into it like ink through paper. She found Danny folding pieces of paper over and over again. Tight, perfect creases. At first, it was cranes and houses, then shapes that didn't look like anything she could name. Spirals, eyes, doors. "Where did you learn these?" she asked, crouching beside him. He didn't look up. He said, "If I keep folding the right shapes, I'll open the rest of the way." "The rest of what?" Danny smiled faintly. "The door inside." She ripped the papers away, shaking. He didn't react, just sat still, blinking slowly, as if part of him had gone somewhere far away. Later that night, she burned the folded shapes in the kitchen sink. The flames turned green. The smoke didn't rise, it sank. That same night, the wallpaper in the hallway began to peel back at the corners. It wasn't peeling from old age. It was peeling from underneath. She tore a section away and froze. Underneath wasn't wood or plaster. It was fabric, dark and stretched tight, as if the walls themselves were stitched skin. When she touched it, it rippled. Warm. She leaned close, and it breathed against her face. Laura stumbled back. From behind the closet door, a single, clear knock echoed through the house. She grabbed Danny and locked themselves in her bedroom. But even then, in the dark, she could feel the house shifting around her. Walls leaning in, floorboards rising, like the whole house was inhaling. Danny spoke softly as he drifted to sleep beside her. "He's unfolding now, piece by piece." Laura sat awake till dawn, listening to the walls exhale. Laura no longer knew what was real. Days blended into nights, and sleep brought no comfort. Only whispers, shadows, scraping sound from inside the walls. Danny barely spoke now. When he did, his voice sounded distant, like it was coming from the bottom of a well. She tried leaving the house once, packed a bag, grabbed Danny, and stepped out the front door. But something was wrong. The world outside had flattened. Colors muted. Shapes seemed distorted. The neighbors' houses were all gone, replaced by dense gray fog. The sidewalk ended after a few steps. Beyond that, nothing, Danny said. He hasn't finished building the outside yet. They went back in. That night, she heard ticking, not like a clock, more like dozens of small claws tapping against wood. It was coming from beneath the bedroom floor. She pried up a board. The space beneath wasn't a crawl space. It was stairs leading down into blackness. She lowered her head, listening. From the darkness below, she heard her own voice whispering, "Don't look away. He's almost here." She slammed the board shut and hammered it back into place with shaking hands. Danny sat up in bed. "He's making more rooms," he said. "Rooms for what?" she asked, barely able to breathe. Danny looked at her, eyes wide, unblinking. "For the others." That night, the sound of shuffling feet echoed from inside the walls. Footsteps, more than one pair. And from the closet, the Eli Thing's voice returned, soft and slow. You think the closet ends with you? You're just a doorstop. You're a welcome mat. Laura pressed her back against the closet, arms trembling. The doorknob turned once. Not to open, just to remind her. He was still right there, waiting. Laura spent the next day searching the house. Not for answers, but for anomalies, spaces that felt too long, walls that shouldn't connect. She moved furniture, measured corners, tapped on every inch of drywall. The house no longer obeyed the laws of physics. The hallway was a foot longer than it had been the day before. The attic access panel had shifted several feet toward the kitchen. Worst of all, Danny's closet had grown deeper. What used to be a shallow space with shelves now seemed to stretch back into shadow. When she shined a flashlight into it, the beam disappeared after a few feet, eaten by the dark. She opened the door fully. The floor was still there, but beneath the surface of the wood, something shifted. Like muscles tightening beneath skin, she slammed it shut and nailed it closed. That night, the nails popped back out, one by one, with tiny, deliberate sounds. Tink, tink, tink. Danny stood at the bedroom doorway, watching her with those glazed eyes. He whispered, "He's not just behind a closet anymore." "What do you mean?" Laura asked. "He's in me now." She froze. "What did you say?" Danny blinked. "Nothing." He turned and walked back to bed like nothing had happened. Laura sat at the kitchen table until dawn, gripping a cup of cold coffee. The house moaned every hour on the hour. Doors opened themselves and closed with heavy finality. Just before sunrise, she checked the hallway again. Where there had once been solid wall between her room and the bathroom, there was now a door. She hadn't installed it. The knob was identical to the one on Danny's closet, brass, round, too warm. With a shaking hand, she opened it. Inside was a narrow corridor lined with dozens of closet doors, stacked vertically along the walls, like drawers in a morgue. And one by one, she heard the click of locks turning. Laura backed away from a new hallway, heart slamming against her ribs. The corridor beyond a mysterious door seemed to stretch far longer than the length of her house should allow. Unnaturally deep, with ceiling and floor dissolving into gloom. Each closet drawer, along the walls, bore labels etched into the wood. They weren't names. They were sounds, weeping, scratching, gnawing, giggling. She turned to close the door, but it wouldn't budge. The lock clicked behind her. Footsteps echoed up from the corridor. Not loud, but deliberate. Something was coming. She grabbed the nearest object, a porcelain lamp from a hallway table, and hurled it at the door. It shattered, but the door didn't even flinch. The footsteps stopped. Then came the rattling. One of the drawers on the left, marked scratching, shuddered violently. She took a cautious step back as a thin crack formed down its center. From inside, something sharp slid through the gap. Not a hand, not claws. Fingertips, dozens of them, scraping downward in unison. From behind her, another drawer creaked open slowly, marked giggling. High-pitched laughter filled the corridor, echoing around her like children playing in a pit. The drawer opened wider, and a face just like Danny's leaned out, grinning with too many teeth. Laura screamed and bolted down the corridor, trying every door she passed. Most were locked. One opened to reveal a brick wall. Another led to a room identical to Danny's, but everything inside was soaked in brackish water. At the very end of the corridor was a mirror. Her own reflection looked back. But behind her in the glass, the drawers were all open. Shapes slithered from them, pale limbs dragging on the floor. Their eyes were buttoned shut, mouths stitched with thread. "You chose to open him," her reflection whispered. Then the mirror shattered from the inside. Laura shielded her face as the mirror exploded outward, razor-sharp shards raining like frozen snow. She stumbled back, hands bloodied, gasping as cold air surged through the broken frame. Beyond the shattered glass was no backing, just a hole. Not an illusion. A passage. From within that void, a hand reached out, long and pale, with skin stretched too tight. Its fingers ended in splintered black nails. Laura turned to run, but the corridor was gone. Behind her, only darkness. She spun back to the mirror just as something pulled itself halfway through. It was her, but not her. The double's face was too smooth, too still. Its smile never moved, frozen like wax. Its eyes didn't blink. When it opened its mouth, Laura could see a second face inside, smaller, sobbing, mouthing "help me" over and over. She stepped back in horror. "You shed mirrors like skin," the thing said with her voice. "You left so many of us behind. Now we're coming back in." A soft click echoed through the darkness. The drawer labeled "Weeping" slid open. From within, dozens of damp, trembling hands emerged, clawing at the air, reaching for her. Some were children's. Some were not. One of them was missing a wedding ring, just like Laura's left hand. "No," she whispered, clutching her head. "You're not real. You're pieces. You're just pieces. So are you." The other her stepped through the frame. Laura screamed and hurled herself sideways, landing hard against a door she hadn't noticed before. It burst open under her weight. She tumbled into her own living room. The morning news played on the television. Danny sat on the couch, watching calmly, as if nothing had happened. "Mom," he said. "You were gone a long time." She crawled forward, trembling. "Danny, what happened? How long was I?" "3 days," he said flatly. She looked down. A shard of mirror glass was still embedded in her palm, and in its reflection, her smile didn't match her face. Laura yanked the shard from her palm with a cry, blood pooling instantly across her skin. She tossed it across the floor where it skittered and came to rest near the couch. Her breath was shallow, head pounding. Danny didn't look away from the television. "Where did you go?" she asked, voice trembling. He didn't answer. "Danny," she tried again, softer. "Please, I need you to look at me." He turned his head, slowly. The skin under his eyes was dark, like he hadn't slept in days. His lips parted. "She said you weren't coming back, so I started listening." Laura's blood ran cold. He pointed at the hallway. "The woman in the whisper room." "The what?" He got up and walked to the hallway door, the one that shouldn't be there, the one with the corridor of drawers and mirrors behind it. But now, when he opened it, the passage was gone, replaced with what looked like an ordinary room painted a sickly shade of yellow. A rocking chair sat in the center. As soon as the door opened, Laura heard it. Whispers, thousands of them, layered atop one another, some as faint as a breeze, others pressed against her eardrums like fingernails. Danny stood in the doorway. "She's inside now, waiting. She said when you came back, you'd have to listen too." "No, Danny," Laura said, stepping forward. "That's not a room. That's not even real. It's something pretending to be real." "She said that's what you are," Danny murmured. Laura froze. He turned and looked at her again, and for the briefest moment, his irises shimmered, like glass catching candlelight. "She said I had 2 mothers now, but only one belongs in this house." Before she could move, Danny stepped into the whisper room. The door began to close on its own. Laura lunged, but the air between her and the door pushed back, like moving through water. And behind her, on every mirror in the house, her own face smiled back. Laura slammed her shoulder into the whisper room door just before it could shut completely. It groaned open with resistance, as though the hinges had suddenly grown stiff with age. The moment it cracked wide enough for her to enter, the air grew thick, like the room itself was underwater. Inside, the whispering voices surged. They weren't all in English. Some were in clicks, some in breathy syllables, and some in a language that didn't belong to any place she'd ever known. But woven through them all, she heard one phrase again and again. "She's listening. Let her in." The rocking chair sat still in the middle of the room. "Empty." "Danny," she called, but her voice barely carried. It came out warped, like it had to push through gauze. "Danny, come here." No answer. Then she saw the outline of small feet just beyond the chair, in the corner where the shadows puddled thickest. "Danny." The child stepped forward. It looked like him, but moved wrong. Too stiff, too careful, like it was remembering how to mimic a little boy. Then it smiled. Not Danny's crooked smile. This one was perfect, like it had been carved into porcelain. And then it spoke, in Laura's voice. "You left him alone too long." Her skin crawled. "What did you do to him?" she hissed. The thing blinked, slow and deliberate. "You mean the first version of him? Or the second? It's hard to keep track. You rewrote him so many times." Laura took a step back. The room grew larger, walls stretching outward. the floor darkening like it was soaking up something beneath her feet. Behind her, she heard her own voice again, but this time speaking softly from inside her own ear. The closet isn't a place. It's a practice. The thing wearing Danny's face giggled. You should see what he drew. You left the drawings out, Laura. It pointed toward the far wall. There, pinned up like museum exhibits, were hundreds of Danny's folded paper shapes, unfolded now. Each one was a map of the house, but with extra rooms. Endless ones. All labeled. Her room. Her closet. Her mouth. Laura staggered to the wall of drawings, her hands shaking as she reached for the nearest one. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges, brittle like parchment, and the lines were drawn with such precise detail, it was like looking at blueprints made by something inhuman. But they weren't just floor plans. Each map had annotations, scribbled in a child's hand. Some marked specific closets with words like "Don't open" or "Hers now." Others had strange coordinates. One just read, "Where I used to be before the boy before me." She flipped through map after map. They stretched on far past what any single house could contain. Some had no staircases, but deep wells. Others mapped corridors that looped back on themselves forever. And one showed a room labeled simply, "The Throat." Behind her, the thing in Danny's form giggled again. He tried to fold her shut, it said, but he never got the creases right. Laura turned on it, fury rising. "Where's my son?" The thing took a step back into the shadows. Then another voice answered, not from the Danny thing, but from beneath the floorboards. "He's making me again." Laura dropped the papers, stepping back as the floor warped under her feet. A bulge rose under the boards, like something crawling just beneath the surface. The wood creaked and bent outward, nails popping. Then a hand burst through. Tiny, pale, Danny's. She felt her knees, grabbing it. "Danny, I've got you. I've got you." But when she pulled, the hand slid off like a glove. It was hollow. She screamed and fell back. The thing now, standing in the center of the room, was unfolding the skin like origami, revealing another face inside. Not a child, a woman's face. Smooth, ageless, lips stitched shut with strands of black hair. Her eyes opened slowly, and Laura felt them in her head. The whisper room walls began to ripple, pulsing like lungs. And from all around her, voices began to chant in unison. One closet opens. One mother leaves. Laura stumbled back from the pulsing floor, her breath ragged. The walls of the whisper room were no longer stationary. They swelled and contracted in a sickening rhythm. The ceiling heaved like a chest drawing breath. The air grew warmer, moist, as though she were standing inside the body of something alive. The origami skin of Danny hung suspended, twitching like drying leather. And beneath it, the woman emerged fully, her stitched lips trembling. She moved with uncanny grace, floating inches above the ground. The hair thread stitching across her mouth began to unravel, one strand at a time, falling silently to the warped floor. Laura didn't want to hear her speak. She knew that if the woman opened her mouth, something would spill out that could never be unheard. She spun and tried to run. The door was gone. In its place, a closet now stood. It wasn't Danny's. Not exactly. It was taller, impossibly tall, reaching far past the ceiling and vanishing into dark sky. Its doors breathed outward with every exhale of the room. Laura backed away, turning toward the maps still pinned to the wall. One of them was different now. It was changing before her eyes, lines sketching themselves, ink running like veins. A new room appeared. The mother's hollow. She touched the paper. The moment her finger made contact, a voice shrieked in her head. "Don't look at her mouth." Too late. Laura looked up. The stitched woman's lips had finally parted. But what came out wasn't a scream. It was a closet door. It unfolded from her mouth like a blossom of bone and wood, lined with hinges and whispers. From inside it, dozens of children's faces stared out, blank-eyed and whispering the same phrase over and over in a chorus of grief. "We were never real, but you made us." Laura fell to her knees, hands clutching her skull. The woman floated closer, her long fingers extending, not to hurt, but to open Laura's chest like paper. You drew the first door, she whispered into Laura's mind. And now you will be the next one. Laura screamed as the woman's fingers brushed her sternum. Not sharp, not clawed, but intentional. She could feel her body responding, not physically splitting, but unfolding along lines she didn't remember having. Creases beneath her skin, seams that had always been there waiting to be tugged. No, she gasped. I didn't make any of this. I didn't. But you did, the stitched woman murmured, her voice pressing into Laura's skull like a warm nail. The moment you doubted what was real. The moment you said his drawings were just drawings. That's when you made room for us. The faces inside the bone door all nodded in unison, their tiny mouths whispering. You let her in. You let her in. You let her. Laura stumbled to her feet and ran for the only thing in the room that hadn't changed, the rocking chair. Somehow, it remained untouched, solid, ordinary. She grabbed it, lifted it over her head, and hurled it at the stitched woman. It struck her square in the chest and shattered like glass. The woman barely moved. But for a flicker, her expression faltered. Laura seized the chance and bolted toward the towering closet at the back of the room. Her instinct screamed that it was wrong, that it would swallow her whole, but there was nowhere else left. As her hand touched the knob, the closet doors opened themselves. Inside, she didn't see darkness. She saw memories. Danny as a baby, reaching for her finger. Danny crying under the covers during a storm. Danny folding paper in silence while she scrolled through her phone. Moments she'd forgotten or ignored. All framed inside small, shifting panels of light, like film reels stuck between seconds. But at the center of it all was a mirror. Not warped, not haunted, just a plain mirror. Laura stepped inside. Her reflection looked exactly as it should, except it was smiling. It's your turn now, the reflection said. And then the closet slammed shut. The sound of the closet slamming echoed forever, like a bell tolling at the bottom of a well. Laura stood frozen, surrounded by images of her own life, each flickering like candlelight on water. The mirror before her showed her reflection still smiling, still wrong. She stepped closer. "Where's my son?" she demanded. The reflection cocked its head. Still folding, still hiding. "You taught him to disappear when things got loud." "I didn't," she began, but the mirror cut her off. "You taught him to hide in plain sight, to tuck his fear into drawings. You rewarded him for being quiet." Laura clenched her fists. "If I made mistakes, fine. But I loved him. I still do." The mirror's smile widened, literally. Split at the corners. Teeth sprouted, glass sharp and layered like a shark's. The reflection's skin began to ripple, pulling away from its face, revealing something else underneath. A second face, familiar. It was her own, again, but younger. Bruised. Crying. The reflection whispered, "Then go find him. But if you do, there's no door back." The light behind her flickered. When she turned, the mirror had become a hallway. Narrow, lined with doorless closets. The air smelled of dust and salt. Beneath her bare feet, the floor was warm, like it had been recently walked on. She stepped forward, heart racing. As she moved, the memories began to whisper. She saw Danny's drawings etched into the walls. Charcoal creatures, empty closets, a woman with her mouth sewn shut. Every few feet, a new phrase appeared beneath them in a child's hand. The first Danny didn't like me. The second one tried to fold me away. The third is still in here with her. Laura stopped cold. How many had there been? She reached a corner. A closet stood at the end, closed tight, with one note pinned to it. "Don't open unless you love him more than yourself." She reached for the handle. It was warm, and it was breathing. Laura hesitated, her hand trembling inches from the closet's breathing handle. Warm air pulsed from the seam between the doors, each exhale brushing her skin like a living sigh. The note fluttered gently from the knob, landing at her feet. The words burned into her mind. "Don't open unless you love him more than yourself." She swallowed hard. "I do," she whispered aloud, not just to the hallway, but to herself. "I love him more than anything." She gripped the handle. The moment she twisted it, a soundless pop filled the space, like the world briefly lost its hearing. The door creaked inward with a long, sticky groan. Inside was blackness, not just the absence of light, but a moving dark, shifting like ink in water, shimmering with shapes that weren't fully formed. Then came the voice. Small, afraid. Mom. Laura's heart cracked open. Danny, she shouted, stepping into the void. The door slammed shut behind her. Total darkness. Danny, baby, I'm here. I'm here. Silence. Then a soft fluttering, like paper wings. A folded crane floated past her face, its wings flapping with unnatural grace. Then another, and another. The air filled with them, spinning around her in a delicate storm of folded ghosts. She moved forward, hands out, bumping into something soft. A blanket, a bed. She could feel the edge of a mattress beneath her palms. Danny, she leaned down and touched a tiny shoulder. The child was curled up, facing the wall, his body trembling. It's okay, she whispered. I found you. He didn't answer. Slowly, she turned him over. It was Danny, but his face was covered, not with a sheet or a mask, but with folded paper. Meticulously arranged shapes stitched across his skin with strands of hair and thread, each one labeled in tiny, cramped writing. Eye, smile, voice. He opened his mouth. It was filled with folded drawings. And behind Laura, the breathing began to quicken. Danny, Laura whispered, her fingers trembling as she reached toward his face. The folds rustled slightly, like tiny wings twitching in sleep. Sweetheart, I'm here now. You don't have to hide anymore. His eyes blinked beneath paper lids. She gently pulled at one labeled eye, and it unfolded with a sound like dry leaves. Beneath it was his real eye, red-rimmed, watery, blinking rapidly as it adjusted to the lightless dark. He gasped, and the paper in his mouth began to shift. Then he choked. Danny, she cried, scooping him into her arms. He was so small, so cold. She dug her fingers into his mouth, desperate, pulling out sheet after sheet. Drawings of rooms, versions of himself, of her, of the woman with the stitched mouth. One by one, she yanked them free, until his lips trembled open and he took in a sharp breath. He coughed, eyes wide, and finally said, in a voice hoarse and hollow, She folded me wrong. I know, Laura sobbed, clutching him to her chest. We're getting out. I'm taking you home. But something was wrong. His body felt too light, too hollow. He looked up at her, tears on his cheeks, and whispered, You can't take paper out of the story. Then the room shuddered. All around them, the blackness began to crack, splintering like glass. Lines of white light cut across the void, forming symbols, sigils, that shifted constantly. The closet wasn't just a space. It was a ritual. The air pulled taut, and the folded cranes circling them grew frantic, fluttering faster, forming a spiral in the air above Danny and Laura. She clutched him tightly, and then a voice echoed through the space. Her voice. You broke the fold. You must take his place. Laura turned. Behind her, the stitch-mouthed woman was there again, but this time, her lips were gone. In their place, a wide-open door yawned across her face. It breathed in, and Laura started to lift from the floor. Laura screamed as her body began to rise, drawn toward the gaping doorway that had replaced the stitched woman's face. The breath from it wasn't air, it was gravity, memory, guilt pulling at the softest, most broken pieces of her. She wrapped her arms tighter around Danny. I won't let her take you. Not again. But Danny, so light, so fragile, looked up at her with strange calm. It's okay, Mommy, he said. One of us has to stay. No, Laura snapped, shaking her head, tears flying from her cheeks. I won't lose you. I won't. The breathing door moaned louder now, sucking in the paper drawings that floated like dead leaves. They rushed past Laura, slapping her skin with each gust. She watched them vanish into the woman's face like being eaten by a memory. And then, a new closet door formed behind Laura. Ordinary. Wood. Familiar. Her closet. Danny's closet. Their house. Danny looked at it, then back at her. That's the way out. The stitched woman's breath stuttered, sensing the portal forming behind Laura. Her face twitched. Her many eyes began to blink out of sync. "She's trying to stop it," Danny whispered. "You have to fold it shut, like I did, from the inside." Laura understood. Her choice wasn't to escape with him. Her choice was to trade places. She kissed his forehead, her hands shaking. "You don't belong here. I should have listened. I should have seen." Danny touched her cheek. "You see now?" She nodded. "Yes, I see everything." She placed him gently on the floor. He turned, ran toward the familiar closet door, toward home. As he passed through, the closet glowed, and the room seemed to sigh. Laura turned to the stitched woman. "I fold this door closed," she said, voice steady, "in the name of every child hidden and unheard." The stitched woman howled. Laura reached out and began to fold the space around her. The void responded to Laura's hands like paper to a master's crease. Each movement was deliberate, each pull of space causing the room to bend and groan around her. The stitched woman lunged, but as Laura folded, the creature was forced back, limbs contorting as the dimensions twisted. The breathing door across her face began to shut. "You were never meant to be," Laura said, her fingers glowing now with pale light. "You were born from silence, from fear. But I won't feed you anymore." The closet around her began to shrink, like a box closing in on itself. Shadows stretched, folded over one another. The floating drawings, the sigils, the broken cries, they were drawn into the center like ink being blotted out. The stitched woman shrieked, her form convulsing violently. Laura continued folding. Her fingers bled. The paper cuts weren't on paper, but on reality. The very fabric of this place sliced her, demanding a toll. But she didn't stop. She thought of Danny sleeping safely in his real bed, of his face in the morning light, of the way he'd whisper, "Mom," when he had a nightmare, of how many times she'd failed to answer. No more. The final crease bent the closet in on itself like a collapsing star. The stitched woman let out one last broken moan as her mouth door sealed completely, her body unraveling into ribbons of parchment, vanishing into the fold. Then, silence. A silence deeper than anything Laura had ever heard. She was alone, floating in a small, pale space that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. The last breath of the closet remained with her. She sat down on the paper-like floor, surrounded by tiny scraps of Danny's drawings. In her lap, one final crane landed. It unfolded itself slowly, revealing a note. "Thank you, Mommy. I remember now." And for the first time in what felt like years, Laura smiled. She had folded the dark away, and she would guard the crease forever. Time became meaningless in the folded place. Laura sat in stillness, surrounded by flickering slivers of memory, drawings, dreams, and old ghosts gently drifting like ash. She wasn't hungry. She wasn't tired. She simply was woven into the heart of a place once ruled by silence and fear. The silence here wasn't like before. It was complete, yes, but not empty. It was filled with the quiet rhythm of memory. Danny's laughter, the soft crinkle of paper, lullabies she used to hum but had forgotten. And slowly, Laura began to remember herself, not just as a mother, but as a girl. She saw her own childhood closet, the one with the crack under the door that let in whispers. She remembered folding paper cranes to keep bad dreams away. She remembered whispering, "Take me instead," when her little brother cried at night, though no one had ever heard her. Or so she thought. Now she understood. This place didn't create monsters. It collected them. It fed on the quiet sacrifices, the hushed fears, the children who folded their terror into silence. And somewhere along the way, it had begun to listen for mothers, too, the ones who forgot their own voices until it was too late. She stood. The room responded, light pulsing with her breath. The folded space was not empty, she realized. It was a womb, and she was its keeper now. From the shadows, new folded figures drifted toward her. Some were children, shadows of those who had hidden too long. Some were broken pieces of her, regret, guilt, promises never made. She didn't run from them. She held them. As she embraced each fragment, it folded itself into her hands, becoming something simpler, smaller, safe. She gathered the pieces like a paper mother gathering her children. And far, far away, in the real world, Danny stirred in his bed, waking to a dawn he didn't understand. He reached beneath his pillow and found a folded note. "I'm with you. I always was." Danny sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Sunlight streamed through his bedroom window, golden and real. For a moment, everything was quiet. The closet door stood wide open. No sados, no breath, no folded things watching. But something had changed. He clutched the note in his small hands. Thin paper, edges soft from being folded and unfolded again and again. His name wasn't written on it. There was no signature, but he knew it was from her. His mother, the one who had stayed behind. He slipped out of bed, bare feet padding across the floor. Each step felt heavier than it should. His room wasn't just a room anymore. It was an echo, an after sound of something folded tightly shut. He walked to the closet and looked inside. Nothing. No drawings. No hands reaching out. Just soft shadows and the faint scent of lavender. Still, he knelt, peered deeper. At the very back, barely visible, was a new crease along the baseboard. A paper-thin seam, white against the wood. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. He touched it. A whisper filled his ear, not from the closet, but from behind his eyes. "When you're scared, fold your fear. I'll hold it for you." Danny shivered. "Mom," he whispered, tears welling in his eyes. Behind him, in the room once filled with scribbles and darkness, the walls now shone faintly with symbols. No longer warnings, but wards. Protective folds. Tiny notes left in the margins of reality. They said things like, "Here lies what was mended." She stayed, so he could wake. A fold is not an end, but a choice. He sat there a long time, his knees hugged to his chest, until his father called from downstairs, voice rough and unfamiliar with morning cheer. "Danny, you awake?" He swallowed and stood. "Yeah," he said. "I'm up." As he walked away from the closet, it stayed open. Always open. But the door Laura had folded shut? That would never open again. Not while she kept it sealed from the inside. Not while she stood in the echo room, watching, protecting, folding every nightmare into paper, so it could never harm him again. Danny didn't speak much that day. At breakfast, he stirred his cereal without eating. His father noticed, of course, but said nothing at first. Grief had made them careful with each other, like they were walking through a room filled with glass. But Danny felt different now, like there was something folded inside him. After lunch, when his father stepped outside to smoke, Danny crept upstairs. He closed the door to his room gently, kneeling by the wall opposite the closet. There was a small tear in the wallpaper there, something he'd never noticed before. A thread of white peeked out from beneath the pattern of faded stars. He picked at it with his fingernail. It peeled back easily. Behind the wallpaper was a grid of creases, folded seams in the drywall itself, like someone had pressed their story into the bones of the house. Each square was marked with a tiny symbol, a circle, a spiral, a pair of eyes stitched shut. And in the center, a handprint, his mother's. He pressed his own hand to it, palm to palm, like paper mirroring paper. The wall breathed, not in that awful closet-breathing way. This was gentler, familiar. He heard her voice again. "When you feel alone, fold a door." He sat back, stunned. Was she still watching? He reached under his bed and pulled out the stack of drawings he'd hidden months ago. Creatures, rooms, a woman with no face. Back then, they had scared him. Now, they felt more like echoes. Memories of a story still being written. He took a fresh sheet of paper and started to fold. A square first, then diagonal lines. A door. He creased it carefully, whispering to himself, "A fold is not an end." The paper fluttered as he finished, rising gently off his hands. Then, it dissolved into a tiny flicker of white light and vanished through the tear in the wall. Danny smiled. Somewhere behind that fold, she was still there, watching, guarding, loving. The next night, Danny dreamed of paper skies. He stood in a wide, open field made entirely of folded sheets, trees creased from green cardstock, clouds suspended by threads of string. Above him, the sky rippled like origami water, shifting gently with each breath he took. In the center of the field stood a little house. His house, but smaller, simpler, folded from a single piece of paper. He stepped inside, ducking beneath the tiny door frame. Inside, his mother waited. She was sitting at a table, her hands busy folding an endless sheet that trailed out the window, across the ground, into the sky. Her face was soft now. No lines of worry. No shadows beneath her eyes. Just peace. "Mom," Danny said. She looked up, smiled. "You found the folds," she said. "That's good. I remembered how." Laura nodded and gestured to the table. "Sit. Help me." He obeyed, and together they folded. Page after page, drawing after drawing. Each one they touched shimmered and curled into a memory. His first day of school. The time he broke his arm. A birthday cake with lopsided candles. She was there in every scene, even the ones he'd forgotten. Then they folded a darker drawing. A closet. A mouth where one shouldn't be. He paused, hands trembling. "You don't have to fold that one," Laura whispered. Danny looked at her. "But if I don't, it stays sharp." She smiled sadly. "You're braver than I was." So they folded it together. Creased the edges, bent the terror into something smaller, simpler. It became a bird. A crane, inked with shadows, but beautiful nonetheless. When he woke, the paper bird was perched on his pillow. Real. He picked it up carefully and held it to his chest. From that day on, Danny began to draw again. But not like before. Now he listened when the paper whispered back. As the weeks passed, Danny began folding more than just birds and doors. He started folding people. It began with a girl with short hair and sad eyes, someone he saw sometimes in his dreams, sitting just outside the field of folded trees. He drew her from memory, then folded her carefully, arms, legs, a tiny face with a dot for a mouth. When he set her on his windowsill, the wind didn't blow her away. Instead, she turned her head, just slightly. Danny didn't scream. He didn't even flinch. He simply said hi, and she nodded. More children followed. Some he remembered, some he didn't. A boy who held a broken toy truck. A toddler with a single shoe. A girl whose eyes were stitched shut with soft gray thread, but whose paper body glowed gently in the dark. They weren't ghosts. They weren't alive, not exactly. They were preserved, like folded versions of themselves, fragments saved from the corners of closets and under beds, from nightmares that hadn't fully devoured them. Danny gave them names, set them gently around his room, spoke to them in the quiet moments when even the night dared not intrude. Sometimes they responded with movement, a tilt of the head, a shift of arms. Sometimes they whispered in his sleep, "You're the fold keeper now. You sealed the door. You saved us." She's still folding. She's still watching. Danny didn't fully understand his role, but he knew what it meant. He had inherited her purpose. The closet had taken her, but not completely. Through him, the folds continued. He never opened the tear in the wall again. Instead, he fed it, gently sliding new cranes, new children, new folded memories into the seam. They disappeared one by one, carried into that soft white space where she waited. His room had once been a prison. Now it was a sanctuary, a place where folded children came to rest. It wasn't long before Danny noticed the folds outside his room. They were subtle at first, tiny imperfections in the world, like wrinkles in a freshly made bed. In the hallway, a shadow bent at the wrong angle. In the living room, the edge of the rug curled when no breeze touched it. Even in the park, tree bark sometimes bore patterns that looked suspiciously like paper creases. One afternoon, he spotted a folded sparrow on a lamppost. It blinked, tilted its head, then fluttered into the air, wings rustling like parchment. A woman walking her dog passed by without noticing it. The folds weren't just his anymore. They were spreading. That night, Danny dreamed of the stitched woman again. But this time she was bound. Not by ropes, but by folds sealed into 1,000 tight creases. Her mouth door didn't move. Her limbs were stiff and frozen mid-crawl. Around her floated a pale glow, like soft candlelight through rice paper. And standing over her was his mother. Laura looked older, wearier, but strong. Her hands glowed with light. She looked up at him. "You'll see more of them," she said gently. "Some will need help. Some will want out. You have to know the difference." Danny stepped closer in the dream. Why me? She knelt, touched his face. Because you listened. Behind her, the stitched woman twitched once, then lay still. Her folds tightened, and she vanished into the blankness. You're not just the fold keeper now, Laura said. You're the unfolder, too. What's that mean? She smiled. It means you'll decide what's worth saving and what should stay folded forever. Danny awoke with the word echoing in his mind. Unfolder. He didn't fully understand it, but he felt it in his bones. There were still monsters in the world. Not all lived in closets. Some hid in plain sight, creased just beneath the surface of the ordinary. And now he could see them. The first time it happened, Danny was walking home from school. A boy he didn't recognize walked beside him. Dirty jeans, black hoodie, scuffed sneakers. Nothing unusual, except Danny hadn't seen him in class, or the hallway, or anywhere. They didn't speak, but the boy's shadow lagged behind, delayed, like it wasn't connected quite right. And every few steps, Danny noticed the boy's fingers twitching, like he was trying to peel something invisible from his skin. Danny quickened his pace. So did the boy. Then the boy turned to him and whispered, Do you see the folds too? Danny froze. He looked at the boy more closely now. His face had no creases, no marks, but there was something wrong with his edges, as if he were folded from a sheet that had been unfolded too many times. Soft tears lined his sleeves. The hem of his hoodie shivered, even though the air was still. I tried to stay sealed, the boy muttered, voice trembling. But I got curious. I opened myself. Danny stepped back. You're not supposed to do that. The boy's head jerked, eyes wide with pain. I know, but once you do, you can't stop. He held up his hand, and Danny saw the paper-thin cracks spidering across his palm, spreading like veins of glass under pressure. I don't know what's real anymore, the boy whispered. Danny wanted to run, but he remembered his mother's words. Someone want out. You have to know the difference. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a sheet of blank paper. Here, he said softly. Fold something. Hold something. The boy took it with shaking hands. He began to fold. A star, maybe, or a flower. As a shape took form, the cracks stopped spreading. The trembling ceased. Danny watched him walk away, his figure more stable now. But as he disappeared around the corner, the shadow on the sidewalk remained a few seconds longer than it should have. Danny bent down and folded that shadow into a crane, and the street felt lighter. Danny had never liked the school library. It was too quiet, too cold, and smelled like old glue and sun-faded pages. But after what happened with the boy on the sidewalk, he started to notice things there, creases in the stacks, whispers between the rows of untouched encyclopedias. One afternoon, as rain drummed against the windows, he felt something shift in the far corner of the library, behind biographies, beyond the section no one ever seemed to check out. The shelf wasn't real, at least not entirely. He reached toward a book that seemed too crisp, too white. Its spine bore no title, just a single black line running top to bottom. When he touched it, the shelf gave way with a low, papery sigh. A folded door opened behind the shelf. Inside was a room made of pages. Ceiling to floor, wall to wall, everything was folded parchment, arranged like origami architecture. Desks shaped like books with legs. Lamps that flickered with candlelight written into their shades. The floor flexed like leather, binding underfoot. A woman sat at a desk in the middle, her head bent low. She wore a cardigan made of bookmark ribbons, and her glasses were folded from clear acetate. She didn't look up when Danny entered. You're early, she said. I didn't know I was coming, he replied. You're a fold keeper, she said, finally meeting his gaze. Her eyes were ink black. Fold keepers always end up here. She slid a sheet of parchment toward him. It showed a map, not of any city or country, but of creases, doorways, tiers, seams that ran through houses, alleys, stairwells, and mirror frames. Places where reality had been creased too hard. This is where the fold bleeds, she said. These places are coming undone. Danny looked at the map. His own house was circled in soft red ink. So what do I do? He asked. She smiled gently, pushing a pen toward him. You fold them back, one at a time. Behind her, the books began to rustle softly, stories longing to be sealed again. Danny stared at the red circle on the map, his pulse thudding in his ears. His house was right there, its lines outlined in thick, curved ink, as if someone had known all along what he'd come to understand only slowly. But the fold wasn't just inside the house. It was the house. The librarian watched him quietly. She didn't blink. She didn't fidget. "These places aren't accidents," she said. "They're scars." "Scars from what?" Danny asked, folding the map slowly, almost reverently. "From choices," she replied. "From grief, from fear. From people who tried to fold the world too tightly to protect themselves. It never works, of course. Eventually, something breaks through." He thought of his mother, of the night she disappeared, of the stitched woman who lived in the dark like a thought too dangerous to finish. Danny stood, the folded map in his hand, now hot with something that wasn't quite warmth. "Can I fix it?" he asked. The librarian tilted her head. "You can try, but some folds can't be undone, only shaped into something better." As Danny left the library, the entrance behind the bookshelf vanished, sealing into smooth, unbroken wood. When he returned home, the first thing he did was go to the wall across from the closet, the one with the torn wallpaper and hidden folds. He pressed his palm to it. Nothing. Then he whispered, "I saw the map." A breath of air sighed against his cheek. The wall shimmered, like paper about to be torn. And for a moment, just a flicker, he saw beyond it. Not just a white space, but rooms. Hundreds of them, folded on top of each other like layers of memory. Some were lit by candlelight. Others were filled with drawings. One, far below, was completely dark except for two glowing, stitched-shut eyes. Danny pulled his hand back. "Not yet," he said. Instead, he took the map and carefully pinned it to the wall. Tomorrow, he would start, not by sealing the closet, but by sealing everything around it. Because if the fold bled outward, then he would meet it out there. And this time, he wouldn't be afraid. The first place Danny visited was a plain gray house 2 streets over, one he'd passed countless times without a second glance. But now, standing in front of it, he saw what others didn't. The creases along the siding, the way the shutters curled inward like folding hands, and a jagged seam just beneath the second-story window. It looked like the house had tried to fold in on itself, but hadn't been able to finish. Danny rang the bell. No one answered. He waited, then stepped back. The porch creaked beneath his feet, but not from weight. It creaked like paper bending. An eerie, flexing groan that sent chills up his spine. Still, he pressed on. He took out a piece of drawing paper and sketched what he saw. The creases, the sagging shape of the window, the rippling shadows along the eaves. Then he folded it. It took several tries, but finally, he shaped a miniature version of the house. Its roof angled neatly, the windows crisp. As he pressed the final crease flat, the real house shuddered. A gust of wind whipped past him, and he heard it, a soft, exhausted sigh from inside. Then, something changed. The seams along the house's walls slowly smoothed. The window that had been warped straightened. The entire building seemed to relax, as if it had been holding its breath for years and finally let go. The front door opened a crack. Danny didn't go inside. He didn't need to. He slipped the folded house into his backpack and whispered, "Rest now," and the door eased shut behind him. He returned home just before sunset, the folded model warm in his pocket. When he pinned it to the map on his wall, it glowed briefly, then settled, a tiny spark of peace in a spreading storm. That night, the children in his room shifted positions. The paper girl with the stitched mouth leaned slightly closer. The boy with the broken truck tilted his head, watching. They knew what he was doing. They remembered these places. And so did the dark. It wasn't done with him yet. The next pin on the map pulsed faintly, a laundromat on the corner of Aspen and Grant. Danny had never been inside. It always looked closed, even when people came and went. He walked there after dusk. The air smelled like warm detergent and wet concrete. Fluorescent lights flickered above the machines, buzzing like angry wasps. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Then he saw the man, sitting perfectly still, hands folded neatly on his knees. His clothes were spotless. His shoes shined like mirrors. But it wasn't his appearance that made Danny freeze. It was that he had no folds at all. His skin was perfectly smooth, like glass stretched over a mannequin. No creases at the elbows, no lines in his palms, no crow's feet, no smile lines, no blink wrinkles. Just smooth, uncreased wrong. The man turned toward Danny. His eyes were pale, no irises, just murky discs like old milk. When he spoke, it was without moving his mouth. "You're the one folding the bleed shut." Danny nodded slowly, instinctively stepping back. The man stood. "That's not your task." "Who says?" Danny challenged. The air around the man rippled slightly. "Folds aren't meant to be mended. They're pressure valves. Memory traps. You close them, the pressure builds." Danny clenched his fists. "And if I don't, they leak into everything." The man's smile was a stretched distortion. "Maybe that's the point." The lights above flickered violently. Danny didn't fold this time. Instead, he pulled the folded house from his backpack and unfolded it slowly, carefully, letting the shape collapse in reverse. As the creases came undone, the laundromat began to blur around him, its edges softening, melting, releasing. The man hissed. "You don't know what you're doing." Danny whispered, "Not yet, but I know what you are." And with a final tear, the laundromat vanished, replaced by an empty field, rusted machines strewn like bones. The man with no fold was gone, but Danny knew he'd be back. By now, the map was alive. Every time Danny folded a location shut, another shimmered into view, ghostly red lines appearing where there had been blank parchment before. The city was more creased than he had ever imagined. The next mark led him to his school. Not a classroom, not the library, but the basement beneath the gymnasium, where storage cages housed old equipment, broken desks, and forgotten boxes. He had never even seen the door unlocked before. But that night it stood open. He stepped into the dark with a flashlight clutched tightly. The air smelled of mildew and dust, but beneath it was something sharper, paper smoke like burned journals. He followed the scent down the steps. That's when he saw it. The walls were covered in folded pages, not just stuck on or nailed in. They were part of the structure, fused like scales. Each one bore a child's name written in graphite. Some he recognized, some he didn't. He touched one gently. It fluttered, then snapped back into place. A low voice echoed from the far corner. "You're early, Daniel." He spun. A figure crouched behind a cage, hidden in shadow. She wore a coat made of stitched index cards and newspaper clippings. Her face was familiar and wrong. It was his teacher, Miss Holbrook, but folded. Her mouth moved sideways. Her nose creased downward when she blinked. Her eyes rolled across separate axes like marbles fighting gravity. "You were one of the first," she whispered. "You saw the closet, but you didn't remember." Danny gripped the wall for balance. "What is this place?" "A vault," she said, "where we store those who try to fold themselves back together, but failed." The paper on the walls trembled. "I didn't come to seal this place," Danny said, his voice steadying. "I came to understand it." Miss Holbrook grinned, an origami smile too sharp for her face. "Then fold carefully," she whispered. "The children in here don't want to be forgotten again." As Danny stepped further in, the folded names began to whisper. Some called his name, some wept, and one of them, soft and clear, cried, "Danny, it's me." Danny's flashlight flickered. The paper walls rustled like leaves in a storm, each folded name now trembling with a subtle, hungry rhythm. The voice that had spoken last, the one that whispered, "Danny, it's me," sounded achingly familiar. Not just in tone, but in emotion. He inched toward the sound, past rusted lockers and wheeled chalkboards with ghost-written equations. The name folds seemed to track his every movement. One page, near the floor, curled outward as he passed. Daniel Caldwell. His breath caught. It was his name, folded and written in the same graphite script. I didn't put this here," he said aloud, turning to Miss Holbrook, but she had vanished. Nothing left but a small pile of paper clips twisted into spirals. The voice came again, louder this time. "Danny, please." It was behind the wire cage. He stepped forward, heart hammering. The cage was locked with a twist of barbed twine, but it unraveled when he brushed it. Inside, kneeling on the cement floor, was a small, hunched figure. A girl, no older than 10. Her hair was braided tightly down her back, but the braid frayed and unraveled as if caught mid-transformation. Her eyes, large and dim, looked at him with terror and longing. "Do you remember me?" she asked. Danny's hand shook. "I know. Should I?" The girl stepped forward. "You left me in the crawl space. The day your mother disappeared. You folded the panel shut." Memories crashed into him like a wave. The day everything went dark. The day he found a closet slightly ajar and a voice whispering from beneath the floor. He hadn't gone in. He was too afraid. She had been hiding there. "You were supposed to come back," she said, voice cracking. "You promised you'd tell." Danny knelt, tears burning behind his eyes. "I didn't know. I didn't understand what this was. I didn't remember." The girl reached in her coat and pulled out a small folded paper boy. It looked just like him. She handed it over gently. "This was all I had to remember you by," she said. "You folded it and left." He looked down at the figure, tears spotting the paper. "I'll remember now," he whispered. "I swear it." From above, something creaked. The fold was listening. The cement beneath Danny's feet began to tremble, a soft, rhythmic quake like the heartbeat of something buried deep beneath the earth. The paper walls surrounding the basement rippled, and several of the name folds unfurled like petals wilting under moonlight. One by one, the children they represented stepped forward. Figures made of paper, ink, and memory. A boy with a paper spine and hollow eyes. A girl who trailed ribbons of cursive writing instead of hair. A toddler with a face scribbled over in thick black marker. And they all looked at Danny. "Do you remember us now?" they whispered in unison. The girl, the one he'd left behind in the crawl space, held his hand tightly. Her fingers were cold and thin, crinkling slightly when she squeezed. "You started to fold us when you were little," she said, her voice soft. "After your mother screamed. After the closet opened." Danny's thoughts reeled. "I thought I made you up." "You didn't," the others said together. "You just forgot us, one fold at a time." The ceiling creaked again, then began to peel. Not fall, but fold upward, revealing darkness like the inside of a closed book. The air grew dense, thick with the scent of ink, glue, and ancient regrets. A massive eye blinked open in the ceiling crease. It wasn't bloodshot or monstrous. It was quiet, sad, rimmed with spiraled lines. And it looked straight at him. The fold knew. The children stepped aside. Danny felt the map in his backpack buzz faintly. It hadn't finished marking every fold. Not yet, but this was the spine. The meeting point of every crease. The fold had a heart, and he was standing in it. "You can still close us," one child said. "You can fold us all away." "But what happens to you when you do?" the girl asked. Danny stared at the eye above, at the layers beneath him, at the folds he'd smoothed, the people he'd saved, the monsters he'd angered. And then he made his choice. "I'm not folding anything shut," he said. "Not anymore. I'm going to unfold it." The children gasped. The fold shuddered. And somewhere in the darkness above, a door unlatched. The door that unlatched above him wasn't a door in the ordinary sense. It was a crease in the world. A long, clean fold of reality that slowly unfurled into a staircase made of pages. Each step bore inked handwriting, faded and familiar. Danny stepped upward. With each footfall, memories stirred. Not his own, but others. A paper beneath his shoe whispered. He was here when they sealed the attic. Another hissed. She never told anyone what she saw in the mirror. The children watched from below, unmoving. Miss Hallbrook was back, sitting on a desk chair halfway up the wall, her body folded sideways, sipping from an invisible teacup. "She'll be waiting," she murmured. "Who?" Danny asked. Miss Hallbrook's lips didn't move, but the shadows around her whispered, "The one who wrote the first fold." The staircase ended in a circular room, more of a hollowed-out paper cocoon than a space. The walls curled inward, made of journals, crumpled notebook covers, and stacks of old drawings. In the center sat a single object, a thick, leather-bound book with no pages. Danny reached for it. As his fingers touched the cover, it shivered and peeled open, not with blank sheets inside, but with creases embedded in every inch like invisible wounds. No words, just tension. The book spoke, not with sound, but with understanding. It showed him the first fold, drawn by a child centuries ago, one who feared what she saw in the mirror when no one else was home. That fear became crease. That crease grew, fed by others like it, fold after fold, child after child, until the world wasn't flat anymore. It was creased like an origami beast trying to hide its face. Danny closed the book and whispered, "You were never supposed to hold these memories." The room pulsed. The fold responded. And in the center of the far wall, a new crease formed, tall, dark, and breathing. Behind it was the author, the one who had folded the first child. The crease in the far wall began to widen, slowly, deliberately, like an eyelid waking from a centuries-long sleep. Paper tore softly as the fold unzipped, revealing a deep void inside. The air thickened. Each breath Danny took felt like inhaling dust from books no one had read in lifetimes. From the darkness stepped a figure. Not tall, not monstrous, not what he expected at all. It was a little girl, maybe 7 years old. She wore a pinafore stained with old graphite smudges and ink blots. Her eyes were dark, too big for her face, and her skin had seams running down the sides of her neck and across her jaw, creases that pulsed faintly. She held a broken pencil in one hand and a strip of notebook paper in the other. On the strip was a single scribbled word, "Sorry." Danny stared at her. "You're the first." She nodded. "I thought it would be something worse." "I was worse," she said quietly. Her voice didn't echo in the paper cocoon. It absorbed. "But I folded myself smaller and smaller until no one could see me anymore." She lifted the strip of paper. "They said I was lying. That monsters didn't come out of the walls. That no one bled shadows." Danny stepped closer. "So you folded the truth." "I folded myself," she said. "And then others found the folds. Crawled inside. Hid from their own terrors. I didn't mean to make a maze. I just didn't want to be afraid anymore." Danny knelt. "Is that why I see them now? Why I remember?" The girl tilted her head. "Because you didn't finish folding. Because you left a corner open. You left me open." A long silence passed. Then she looked past him, toward the hallway behind the cocoon. "But something else followed you here. Something that feeds on folds." Danny's blood ran cold. The walls around them pulsed with ink veins. The girl stood up slowly. "He comes when we try to unfold," she whispered. "He waits at the edge." A long, low growl rippled through the structure, like the sound of tearing cloth and distant crying. Danny turned. There, emerging from the last crease, was a shadow without form. A writhing shape made of unfolded things, scribbles, regrets, screams never heard. The fold wasn't alone. It didn't walk. It poured. The unfolder emerged from the deepest crease like smoke, and ink fused into something solid. Arms unraveling like scrolls, legs that dissolved into a puddle of half-erased stories. Its face was a shredded mess of paper and skin that refused to hold shape. And wherever it moved, folds began to open. The walls peeled back. Names that had been locked away fluttered into the air, whispering broken thoughts. The paper cocoon moaned like a wounded animal. The girl, the first folder, stepped back into the shadows, shielding her eyes. Danny stood frozen. This was different. Not a creature of fear like the ones he'd faced before. This thing didn't hide. It undid. It erased every defense people had used to cope, to survive. "Danny," the girl said, "he wasn't born from fear like me. He was born when children were made to forget." The unfolder's head twisted in jerks, seeking. Its mouth opened, not to speak, but to reveal. Inside was a bottomless mass of letters, shredded diary entries, crossed-out phrases, torn drawings. The things no one was allowed to keep. The girl whispered. But Danny stepped forward. "No," he said, voice shaking. "I remember you. I remember all of them." The unfolder paused, its grotesque form trembling. Danny pulled the old map from his backpack. It was glowing now, alive, pulsing like a heart. Every fold he had sealed shimmered along its surface. But now, he saw the spaces between, creases that hadn't yet been discovered. The unwritten ones. "This ends here," Danny said. He unfolded the map fully. The room shook violently. The walls cracked. Light spilled from the paper like morning sun. The unfolder screamed, not with sound, but with pure memory, millions of them flaring at once. A rush of forgotten moments surged out. Scraped knees, bedtime promises, final glances before someone disappeared. Danny felt it all. His mother's last look before the closet took her. The girl he left behind in the crawlspace. Miss Holbrook folding herself sideways, hoping to forget what she'd seen. The unfolder began to unravel, its limbs detaching, folding in on themselves without control. Its shape collapsed inward like a failed origami bird. "You can't survive in memory," Danny whispered. "Only in forgetting." The unfolder wailed once more, and vanished. Only the girl remained, and the folds began to loosen. As the last echo of the unfolder faded, the chamber grew still. No more whispering pages, no creaking paper walls, just quiet, so deep and complete it hummed in Danny's chest like a heartbeat he hadn't heard since childhood. The girl stepped forward, cautious now. Without the unfolder's presence, she seemed smaller, lighter, less like a legend and more like a scared little kid. "You did it," she said softly, staring at the map in Danny's hand. "You made it remember." Danny looked down. The map had changed. Where once it had been littered with folds and sharp creases, now it was softening. Lines relaxed, ink bled in gentle curves. Some names, once jagged and half-formed, now glowed steady and whole. He touched one, Eloise Harrow, the girl from the closet. He felt her memory pulse through him like sunlight through a curtain. Not pain, clarity. "I think I can finish it now," he said. "I can unfold it." The girl's eyes filled with tears. "Are you sure? You won't be able to fold it back up. You'll remember everything." "So will they." Danny nodded. "That's the point." Ms. Holbrook appeared behind him, whole this time. Not bent, not folded, just tired. "I always hoped someone would finish what we started," she said. "But I was too afraid to remember." She reached out and touched Danny's shoulder. "Unfold it, Daniel. Let them see again." Danny laid the map on the floor. He took a breath and unfolded the first crease. A thunderous sigh filled the chamber. Not a scream, not fear, but the sound of something long hidden stretching, waking. The folds began to ripple outward, collapsing into light, pages flattening into walls, corners melting into doors. Above them, the cocoon peeled open like a flower, revealing the night sky. Real sky, with stars unblinking. The children below began to change. The paper ones, once crinkled, silent, hollow, softened. They blinked. Some wept. Others laughed. One by one, they remembered who they had been before the fear folded them away. Eloise appeared beside Danny, solid and trembling. Her eyes locked with his. "You came back," she whispered. He nodded. "This time, I didn't fold the panel shut." From above, dawn began to rise. Not from the sun, but from memory, warm, golden, and true. The map dissolved into the floor like ink into water, leaving only a faint silver outline where the last fold had been. The cocoon unfurled entirely, and Danny found himself standing in a space that hadn't existed before, a room that memory built. Shelves lined the walls, filled with old spiral notebooks, shoeboxes of Polaroids, drawings on construction paper, every artifact a child had ever made and forgotten. And at the far end of the room, beside a desk covered in yellowed post-it notes and worn journals, sat a man. Not a monster, not a ghost. A man in his 70s, in a faded corduroy coat with elbows worn thin. His face was kind, but tired, with deep creases that matched those of the pages around him. He looked up and smiled. "Hello, Daniel." Danny hesitated. "Do I know you?" "You do now," the man replied, rising slowly. "I'm the archivist." Danny blinked. I thought she created the fold." "She did," the archivist said. "But someone had to keep track. Someone had to collect what the world threw away." He gestured to the shelves. "Every time someone told a child their fear wasn't real, I kept the proof. Every whisper ignored. Every monster no one believed in. Every voice that called out in the night." Danny stepped forward, his eyes scanning the spines of countless journals. One had his name on it. The archivist saw his gaze. "Yes, Yours is here, too, but it's incomplete. Danny opened it. Inside were entries not in his handwriting, but in others. Teachers who didn't believe. A classmate who saw something but kept quiet. His mother, scribbling desperate thoughts in the margins. I hear him whispering again. I think I made a mistake. I should have never moved into that house. Danny's chest tightened. She knew, he asked. She tried to forget, the archivist said. The fold helped her. Until it didn't. Danny closed the book gently. I want to finish it, he said. I want to record everything, so no one has to fold themselves away again. The archivist studied him. Then, from beneath the desk, he pulled out a blank journal. Clean, new, its cover dark and soft like velvet. This one's yours now, he said. But remember, Daniel, once you write it down, it becomes real for everyone. Danny took the journal in both hands. I'm ready. The journal was warm in Danny's hands, almost alive. The cover shimmered slightly, as if the stories inside it were eager to be written. He opened to the first page. Blank. Clean. Waiting. He glanced at the archivist, who gave a slow, solemn nod. Go ahead, Daniel. Write what you saw, what you survived. Danny hesitated, pen trembling in his grip. What do you write when the truth has teeth? He began, scratching words onto the page. The closet opened the night my mother disappeared. I thought I'd imagined it. I didn't. Something was inside, something hungry for the forgotten. I followed it. I found the fold. I found her. He wrote of Eloise, of the first girl who folded herself in a paper because no one believed her. He wrote about the other children, the ones with mouths stitched by graphite, whose memories had become brittle and silent. He described the rooms, the codes, the map. He wrote about the unfolder. The archivist sat across from him, quietly weeping as the pages filled. Each word you write pulls another thread back together, he said. Keep going. Danny did. He wrote about MS. Hallbrook and her trembling hands, about the things he'd seen scrawled across walls and into floorboards, about the attic and the mouths in the vents, about the eyes behind the folds that always watched but never spoke. We weren't just scared, he wrote. We were buried, and someone had to dig. The room pulsed gently with each sentence, reality reshaping itself around the ink. The fold, at least this corner of it, was unfolding. Danny didn't stop until his hand cramped and ink bled through the last few pages. When he finally set the pen down, the journal was nearly full. The archivist reached over, gently closing it. Well done, he said softly. You gave the silence a voice again. Danny looked around. The room had changed. The children had gone, back to their lives, their homes, their memories restored. No longer folded, no longer paper thin and hollow-eyed. But Eloise remained. She stood just beyond the doorway, smiling through her tears. You brought us back, she whispered. All of us. Danny stepped toward her, heart pounding. Are you coming with me? She nodded. If you'll have me. Danny smiled. Always. Danny stepped through the final threshold, Eloise's hand in his. The world beyond the archivist's room was shifting, like layers of wallpaper peeling back to reveal what was always underneath. They passed the places he'd once feared. The hall of muffled screams, now quiet and lit by sunlight streaming through exposed rafters. The room of teeth, empty, the bloodstains faded to dust. The map's folds had unraveled behind them, flattening the twisted passages of the fold into hallways of memory. At the very end was the door. It was the same one Danny had entered through that first terrible night. The old closet in his bedroom, its brass knob now unblemished, the wood no longer swollen with damp. He turned to Eloise. Once we leave, what happens to all this? She glanced back. The fold will sleep. Not gone, but open, like a book no one's reading, waiting for someone to pick it up again. Danny swallowed hard. Will we remember? She smiled. Only if we want to. Miss Hallbrook approached behind them, her cane gone, her eyes sharp and filled with clarity. Go, Daniel, she said. Live. You've done more than enough. Danny looked one last time at the world he had walked through, a world of whispers, paper-sliced screams, memory, and ink. He took the journal, now glowing softly, and held it close. He turned the knob and stepped out into his bedroom. Sunlight streamed through the window. His alarm clock read 7:12 a.m. The house was still, but it felt alive. On the floor lay the old backpack. No dust, no blood, just his math book and a few scattered pencils. Eloise stood beside him, as real as the walls around her. She looked around with wonder, fingers brushing the edge of his desk like she hadn't touched anything solid in years. Danny opened the closet. Empty. Just a few coats and an old shoebox. No whispers. No teeth. No folds. He walked downstairs. His mother was in the kitchen, humming. When she saw him, her eyes widened. Danny. He ran to her, burying his face in her shoulder. She held him tight, as if she remembered something, too. Something terrible she had once chosen to forget. I had a dream, he said, but I think it was real. His mother nodded slowly. I believe you. The days that followed passed like warm honey, slow, sticky with memory. Danny returned to school. The halls felt smaller now, the ceilings lower. Kids who once laughed too loudly or ignored the quietest ones started to watch him differently. Some offered unsure smiles. Others kept their distance, as though sensing something strange clinging to him. Eloise walked beside him most days, invisible to everyone else. She wore real clothes now, soft jeans, a flannel shirt, and her feet made sound when they touched the ground. No more paper rustling beneath her steps. Do you think they remember? Danny asked her as they sat outside during recess. She picked at a blade of grass. Parts of them do, like dreams that don't fade all the way. He looked down at his journal, which he kept in his backpack at all times. You're writing again, she noticed. Danny nodded. Every night. I think the fold isn't dead. It's just resting. She smiled faintly. Then you're its keeper now. That night, while brushing his teeth, Danny caught movement in the bathroom mirror. It wasn't his own. A handprint, small and pale, appeared in the mirror's corner. Written in fog above were words. Don't forget us. Danny stared, heart pounding. The fog faded slowly. He wiped the glass clean and stared at his reflection. His own eyes stared back, calm, older somehow. Tired but not scared. He brought the journal into bed with him and opened it to a blank page. They're still there, he wrote. Watching. Waiting. Not angry. Just hoping. Hoping we won't forget them again. He set the journal on his nightstand and turned off the light. The closet door remained slightly ajar, but it no longer frightened him. Inside it was only darkness. Not hungry, not twisted, just empty. And behind his walls, the voices had grown quiet. Not gone, just listening. Eloise's voice echoed in his mind as he drifted off to sleep. The fold doesn't need fear to survive. It needs remembrance. And this time, Danny remembered everything. A week passed. Danny thought the worst was over. He slept soundly, the journal at his bedside, pages slowly filling with his thoughts. He drew the rooms he remembered, mapped the voices, cataloged the names of every child he could recall seeing within the fold. Eloise helped him when memories blurred. But one night, while searching his dresser for a pair of socks, his hand struck something in the far back corner of the bottom drawer. He reached in. It was a folded paper. Heavy. Thick. He hadn't seen it before. It felt wrong in his fingers. Like it had been waiting. He unfolded it carefully. The paper was a diagram, crudely drawn in red crayon, childish and frantic. It showed a spiral staircase leading downward, disappearing into a jagged scribble marked with an X. The corner bore a signature he hadn't seen in years. Benji T. Danny's breath hitched. Benji Thompson, a boy who'd lived 2 doors down. Quiet. Strange. Always talking to himself. He'd gone missing when Danny was 7. Everyone assumed his family had moved away overnight. But Danny remembered something else. Benji had always been afraid of closets, and he used to carry notebooks full of scribbles. Danny sat on the floor, the diagram laid out before him. This wasn't part of the fold, he whispered. No, Eloise said softly, appearing behind him. This is older. Deeper. Danny looked up. There's more than one. The fold is only one layer, she said. Beneath it, there's the crease. A shiver ran through Danny. What's the difference? The fold hides forgotten children, Eloise said. But the crease holds the ones who were deliberately erased. Danny stared at the paper again. Something in the sketch pulsed faintly now, a heartbeat beneath crayon lines. "We have to go," he said. Eloise didn't argue. She only nodded. "But if we go that deep," she warned, "we may not come back." Danny looked toward the closet again. The crack beneath its door was just wide enough for the edge of the diagram to begin pulling inward, like it knew he was coming. He grabbed the journal, the flashlight, and his courage. Then he opened the door and stepped into the dark once more. Danny ducked through the closet and found himself standing at the top of a narrow, spiraling staircase, just like the one in Benji's diagram. But these steps weren't made of wood or stone. They were made of paper, worn, thick pages folded and stacked in crude steps, each etched with faint ink. Fragments of erased stories and names that had been violently scratched out. The stairwell twisted endlessly downward into a place that had no scent, no sound, no warmth. Just absence. Eloise followed closely, her fingers trailing the wall, which bled static and hushed voices the deeper they went. Halfway down, Danny whispered, "Why would someone erase a person?" She didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, because some truths hurt too much to keep, so the world folds them away. Or worse, creases them. As they reached the final step, the air grew thin, brittle. It felt like breathing dust. The hallway that greeted them was bent, not curved or broken, but unnaturally warped, like reality had been folded over and sharply pressed. At the end of the hallway stood a door. Wide, black. No. It pulsed. Danny stepped forward, but the air thickened. Eloise held his arm. "This is it. Once we go through, there's no promise of light." He nodded. "I have to know." Benji didn't draw that map for no reason. He reached into his pocket and unfolded the diagram again. It had changed. A new line had appeared, branching off from the spiral. It led to a shape, no longer an X, but an I, staring wide, leaking ink. Danny looked up at the door. The wall whispered, "You shouldn't be here." He pushed. The door folded inward like paper tearing in reverse, revealing a massive chamber. At the center stood a desk, identical to the one in Danny's bedroom. Behind it sat a boy, thin, pale, eyes wide and unfocused. Benji Thompson. He was whispering into a stack of folded notes, over and over again. "I didn't mean to forget. I didn't mean to forget. I didn't mean to forget." Eloise gasped softly. "He's been down here for years." Danny stepped closer. "Benji," called. The boy's head snapped up, eyes filled with ink, mouth sewn shut, not with thread but writing. And behind him, something unfolded from the shadows. Tall, pale, a face with no eyes. Just dozens of whispering mouths. The creaser had awoken. The creaser moved like liquid paper given shape, smooth, deliberate, soundless. Its arms unfolded from itself, jagged at the joints, fingers like quills scraping across parchment. Each of its mouths whispered a different name, some too mangled to recognize, others almost familiar. Danny stood frozen, heart thundering. The thing behind Benji didn't just exist, it remembered in a way no human mind could. Every erased child, every folded away story, every mistake cast into darkness, it carried them all. Benji stood from the desk, hands twitching as if trying to write something with invisible tools. The ink in his eyes dripped like tears. "Help him," Danny hissed to Eloise, who had gone pale. "I don't know how," she whispered. "This is beneath the fold. There are no rules here." The creaser took a step forward. A nearby wall shivered. Paper peeled away, revealing not a hallway, but a memory. Danny, younger, hiding from his father's, shouting in a closet, knees to his chest, biting his lip until it bled. Another wall opened, his mother crying over a forgotten birthday cake. Another, Benji drawing spirals in the schoolyard dirt while other kids taunted him, unseen by teachers, erased by apathy. "It's feeding on what the world forgets," Eloise said, trembling. "That's why it holds him here. Incomplete stories make it stronger." Danny stepped forward. He reached for Benji. The boy flinched at first, but then met Danny's gaze. Their fingers touched, and the room shook. The creaser let out a sound like tearing fabric. Its mouth cried out in unison, N.O. remembering. Danny clutched Benji's wrist and pulled. You're coming with me. Benji's sewn mouth split open, letters unraveling and scattering into the air like freed birds. He screamed. No, spoke for the first time in years. Don't take me back. The chamber twisted violently. Walls folded inward like collapsing lungs. Eloise grabbed Danny's arm. Run! They sprinted back toward the spiral stairs as the creaser lunged. One long arm, tearing through memories, pages exploding in its wake. Behind them, Benji wept ink and blood. But he ran, and the fold, dormant no longer, began to stir. The paper staircase writhed beneath their feet as Danny, Eloise, and Benji scrambled upward. It wasn't just collapsing, it was fighting them like the crease itself had no intention of letting its prisoners go. Benji kept stumbling. He looked starved, his legs weak, but something burned behind his ink-stained eyes now. A memory. A want. I remember the way out, he gasped, clutching Danny's shoulder for balance. The fold. It let me glimpse it once. Above them, the darkness began to shimmer. Not light. Not yet. But hope. Below, the creaser was unfolding itself into something larger. It no longer needed form. The spiral groaned under its weight as tendrils of parchment and ink lashed the walls, trying to pull the children back down. Every name it had ever taken hissed from its mouths in fury. Benjamin, Daniel, Eloise, return, erased, belonged to the crease. Pages tore from the walls and flew like razors through the air. One sliced Eloise's cheek, leaving a smear of ink instead of blood. They climbed faster. Suddenly, a soft light blinked into view, the top. The closet door, barely visible through fluttering shadows. We're almost there, Danny shouted. The stairs jolted violently. Benji lost his footing and screamed as he tumbled downward, only to be caught by Eloise, her fingers locking around his wrist just in time. I won't let you fall again, she growled through gritted teeth. Benji's lip quivered. You remember me? Eloise nodded. I saw you watching me draw in the library. I never forgot you. Not once. He climbed back up with her help, lip trembling. The light above flickered. Something was wrong. Danny reached the last step and stopped cold. The closet door was sealed. And oh, he shouted, pounding on it. Let us out. The creaser was right behind them now. Its limbs scraped the walls, erasing everything it touched. Whole stairs disappeared into paper-thin voids. Danny, Eloise cried. Use the journal. He ripped it from his pocket, fumbling, fingers numb. He opened to the last page and wrote, We remember. The words burned into the page with a glow like sunrise. The door cracked, and then, with a scream from every name ever lost, the closet door blew open. The door burst open with a deafening crack, not wood breaking, but something older giving way, like a vow being broken. Danny, Eloise, and Benji dove through, the blinding light from the hallway searing their eyes after so long in the dark. As they crossed the threshold, the fold seemed to scream, a shriek not from pain, but from the rage of being denied its victims. The moment Danny's feet hit the carpet of his bedroom, the closet door slammed shut behind him, and everything went still. He collapsed on the floor, breathing hard. Benji lay beside him, curled into a fetal position, whispering to himself. His eyes were red now, not with ink, but from tears. Real ones. I thought I was gone, he murmured. I thought no one would ever remember me again. Eloise placed a hand on his shoulder, her own breath shuddering. We remembered. You're here. You made it back. Danny sat up and looked around. His room was the same, but quieter. The silence wasn't threatening anymore. It was the stillness of storm ended. But then something drew his eye. On the wall beside the closet, where nothing had ever hung before, there was now a picture. A faded school photo, dusty, warped. Benji stood in the middle row, unsmiling. Forgotten once, and now returned. Danny stood and approached the wall. Beneath the photo, scratched in small, neat handwriting. Those who are remembered never truly vanish. He turned to the others. What happens now? Benji looked toward the window, where dawn was just starting to rise. He smiled faintly. I think I go home. You have a home? Danny asked, surprised. Benji nodded slowly. Maybe not the one I had, but somewhere. Something's waiting. I feel it. The floor didn't open. The walls didn't bleed. No dark force screamed to pull him back. He simply walked out of the bedroom, barefoot, into the quiet house. Eloise turned to Danny. The fold is quieter now, but it's never really gone. You know that. He nodded. It'll come back? Maybe not for you. Maybe not for a while, but always comes back. Danny looked at the journal. The last page now bore more names, hundreds of them, appearing one by one, glowing faintly. I'll be ready, he said. Days passed. Benji didn't come back. Not through the front door, not in Danny's dreams. It was as if the fold had released him into a different layer of the world entirely. Yet Danny knew, felt, that he was safe. Somewhere out there, remembered. The journal now sat on Danny's desk, humming softly when touched. It refused to close completely. The names on its last page continued to multiply, one every few hours, each glowing for a moment before fading gently into the parchment like embers cooling in a hearth. Eloise had gone quiet. She didn't vanish exactly, just faded from school life. She sat beside Danny at lunch, but rarely spoke. She seemed to be listening to something only she could hear. One afternoon, Danny asked her, "What's it saying to you?" She blinked, looked up from her half-eaten apple, and smiled faintly. "It's not saying. It's asking." Danny leaned in. "Asking what?" "If we're willing to be its keepers now. If we'll help remember the forgotten. Not everyone escapes the fold." Danny opened the journal. A new name appeared. Nathan Cole, age 9, went missing behind the school auditorium. He didn't recognize the name, but something about it hurt to read. Eloise saw the pain in his eyes and nodded. He sat 2 rows behind you in 3rd grade. Laughed when you dropped your tray. No one remembers him now. Not even his parents. Danny whispered the name. The ink glowed brighter. I remember. And that, it seemed, was all it took. The pages of the journal shifted again, revealing a new section. Maps. Rough sketches of crawl spaces, shadowed corners of libraries, forgotten doors in old buildings. Each marked with a crease. The fold was wounded, yes, but it wasn't dead. That night, Danny left his flashlight on. Not because he was afraid, but because someone, somewhere, might be looking for a light. And he would be there to answer. Because the boy in the closet was no longer hiding. He was watching.